Construction Contracts, John Cooper Clarke biography, not a huge amount. Catch-22, my absolutely battered copy of Catch-22, which is about fucking 40 years old.
When I ask my seminar groups at work what book is their favorite book and what book they haven't read but they think they should have, for the latter, I always say Catch-22, because I know I should read it, but I never have, and I'm slightly ashamed that I've never read it.
You're welcome to my copy. It's no, it's great. I've read it many times, but I've got, look at this, look at my little selection of it.
Yeah.
Pocket size, in case I need a bit of
on the tube, on the train. You just need to get a bit of Dow going.
There is, cool, right.
Well, anyway, we're running, so we best crack on. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I haven't seen you before Christmas.
Been away.
Happy New Year to our one viewer.
Yeah. Happy New Year to all of you at Broadmoor.
Yes. The only thing on TV in Broadmoor over Christmas was us, but
poor sods. Yeah, suicide rate went through the roof.
Did you have a good one?
Yeah, fine. Different. I was in Spain, seeing Irene's family. So Christmas Day on the beach, about 18 degrees. Felix was in the sea, and but it was nice. Still family and food and drinkies and stuff.
Good.
Yourself?
Yeah, it was fairly quiet, but it was nice. And then back to madness and mayhem with the weather and all that sort of stuff. And
straight back in, and we got snow on the ground. So
and a couple of terrorist attacks over Christmas. So maybe some stuff for future discussion. Some footage.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I think both a little fresh to get into the podcast here, but both similar MOs and that. So and I know it's something we've discussed before. So I think perhaps the next one.
Let the dust settle and some of the information get a little bit clearer. I'm sure more footage and stuff or more testimonies will start to emerge and so on, and people will begin to piece it together a little bit more accurately. So maybe we should do something on sort of that kind of terrorist attack, which is fairly familiar now in terms of kind of driving at people and so on. But cool. Good. Yeah. Apart from that, no, all is good. Back to classes as last week. We had one class on Thursday. That was our first of the new year, and then a full suite coming up this week. Back to normal. So looking forward to getting back into training and teaching. And of course, we did the World War II Combatives seminar just before Christmas for club members, which I thought was really good fun.
I really enjoyed it. I think everyone did there. It was a good blowout to the end of the year, and some good stuff. It is our heritage.
I'm just amazed. I mean, it's been a long time since I taught that in a more than just a kind of an exerted form, right? It's been a long time since I spent a couple of hours just teaching the Fairburn material as the Fairburn material. It's like blown away at just how kind of simple and effective and quickly learned it is. It was just years beyond its time in what it distilled and put together for a very specific kind of brief, which we've talked about before. But I'm always I was very pleasantly surprised by the material and the reaction of people that had not trained it before, perhaps not even seen it before, how they kind of quickly reacted to it and picked it up. I think you have to go along, in terms of that kind of very specific, basic unarmed combatives for that brief of being able to learn in a few hours. It would go a long way to find material that eclipses that in any significant way now, even now. But I thought it was a really good refresher on that of how important and effective it is. But cool.
We'll do it again.
I think we should. And
got the kit now.
Got the fancy dress. There's a fair few people that seem to be doing that. I mean, there's a lot of people popping up kind of teaching World War II combatives, which I just kind of think, yeah, it's interesting that they're doing that. Some people are doing it, I think, for real in fancy dress rather than a Christmas party, but get a kick out of I think the young people call it cosplay now or something like that. But you know, basically dressing up in period costume and doing period things. But yeah, and one of the things that always has intrigued me in the last few years is people popping up kind of teaching World War II combative stuff, and you kind of think, well, where did you learn it, right? Well, you out of a book, right? You learn it out of a book, and now you're teaching it to other people, and you know, generally within the martial arts community, we kind of laugh at people who learn from videos and books, you know, as though that's a good supplement for, or a good replacement for actually kind of hands-on in class, in-person training with lots of other people, that you can somehow learn it from a book. I guess if there is anything you can learn from a book, then it's probably the most basic combative stuff. But then, you know, to package it up and teach it to other people is somewhat curious. And I think I mentioned it before, but you know, I think, you know, our heritage in that is somewhat unique in the sense that, you know, I got it from, you know, the horse, not the horse's mouth, but someone who did get it from the horse's mouth, right? You know, so yeah, my judo instructor was the son of one of the Shanghai municipal policemen behind. That was in the unit of Fairburn at the time, and was arguably, if his son's to be believed, one of the people that kind of developed that material, Jack Paul, who appears in a lot of the biographies of Fairburn. But yeah, anyway, interesting kind of historical sort of stuff. And a side note, so we should probably crack on. You probably got some footage.
There's a little bit, obviously, it's coming to you sort of fresh. You haven't seen it, same sort of format as usual, so we'll just run it through
the analysis.
Exactly, and I think it's sort of relevant to some of the training we were doing as we were wrapping up towards the end of the year, and I think sort of break it down from there. It's not fantastic fighting, bit of hooliganism, but yeah, lots of people doing lots of stuff, so let's crack on.
Okay.
Give me a mo whilst I get my IT hat on. Can you see an image?
It's coming. Yeah, there it is. I can see the image. What shocking footage! I am.
Don't worry about shocking footage. It's yeah, footage. I think shocking to a Daily Mail reader. It's perhaps a bit more mundane to us.
All right, let's give it a whiz whenever you're ready.
Yeah, okay. Let the mayhem ensue.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that was pretty hectic. There was a lot going on there. So on the first pass, maybe we'll have a look at it again in a second. Let me have a quick stab from the first pass of what I saw. Obviously, some kind of security door staff from a pub or something like a bar. You can see the reflective jackets, patches on their arms, so it's obviously in England or Britain because they've got the SIA badging going on, I assume. Maybe that's universal on the arm anyway, but it looked like that. Looks like some kind of group kicking off with the security, or perhaps someone else who is with the security, and looks to be 2 or 3 security guards there. I couldn't quite catch how many, and it looks like it starts with the usual verbals, bit of pushing, bit of shoving, and then the usual kind of overarm punch in a crowd, which normally people swing round, right? I always, come looping round unless they're in a really compressed space, and it loops over the top, which I always thought was kind of really, it's like really working hard to make that punch as ineffective as possible, right? If you knew how to punch straight, you could punch. You could punch through the size of a letterbox if you knew how to punch straight. You wouldn't need. But no, they've only got 4 feet, so they can't bring their arm round from the side. They have to bring it over the top and loop it down and smack their knuckles on the top of your head. And then various people get involved. There seemed to be a woman there who was very proactive. Getting stuck in with some hammer fist type action.
She was wailing away.
Hammer fist must be combatively trained, right? It's like, the Combatives brigade, hammer fist. So it's like the magic shot. Keeps on going. It's largely being kind of held at arm's length by one of the security guards until I think someone must hit her or throw her or something, because she's then out. And then people are coming in at various points to try and throw punches. And interesting, I think maybe this is one of the points that you were wanting to bring out, was the way that the security guards actually employ a kind of a tactic that I think we talked about last time, but also we practice quite a lot, multiple assailant situations, which is, if there's 2 of you and there's lots of them, then stick together, shoulder to shoulder, put your back against a wall, and then no one can get behind you, and they're going to funnel to you, right? Even if all of everything is in front, they can only get so many so close to you, which is probably going to be about 4. Maybe one trying to throw kind of haymakers over the top from behind. But basically, there's going to be a maximum of 4 or 5 people in front of you, which 2 against 4, 2 against 5. It's not great odds, but it's better than being out in the open and there being 8 of them around you kicking you on the floor, because one's got behind you and dragged you to the floor. I think one went down at one point, got pulled back up, and so on. That's kind of my initial sort of observation of what happened. No particular comments on why, but it was quite chaotic. So let's have another run through it again, and let's talk through it.
Absolutely. So I'll give you a little bit of orientation on it as well. Let me share that screen again. Now then, you see it again?
Yeah.
So I'll run it in a bit and then pause it. So it's hard to see here because all the faces are blanked out. But what you will see is this group here are in an altercation with, I initially thought it was 2 doormen and maybe an amigo of theirs, but it looks like it's 3 doormen, one of which who doesn't have the reflective stripes on, 2 of which that do. Punches starts to get thrown, and then we'll just roll it from there a little bit. So the guy in the black, who's on the right,
they got dragged out
now getting that hammer fist. You see, he's actually got the badge on as well. It's the 3 security guys there. Okay. So everybody else is in a group together that we don't know what ensued, but it's post football, and I think everybody was a bit amped and a bit carted. You can see it looks like the end of the night. The table's up. And I think I'll roll it again, let it ensue. But what's really noticeable is when they do get back to the wall and how that works, and the moment that they leave that wall, how it all goes to shit for them. Even though with any sort of degree of training that they have or experience, they're all on the floor at some point. And one of them is very lucky not to get size 10 straight through his head, just about 3/4 of the way through. So
let's have a look. So a couple of them been dragged off the wall and trying to make their way back. It kind of keeps surging forwards. 2 of them together. There's something there to trip over as well.
Guys just chucked it in, but 2 of the security guys have gone forwards.
She's still got hold of him and pulling him about. Now someone pulled her off and she's hit the deck. Right, one's gone down. But
now they all line up on the wall. And suddenly, Bob, he's able to do something.
Hands are up as well. he's got his hands up, so he knows what he's doing. It's not down by his side. Super interesting. Super interesting. So a few initial thoughts at random. I mean, one we're not talking about the usual kind of self-defense scenario that we're usually talking about. I mean, think of the videos we covered so far. We looked at one on sort of random knife attack in a terrorist situation. Guy being picked on just by a group as he's walking down the road for having an American accent or whatever it is. And this one is obviously a situation that involves security stuff, so professionals who are required to be there, right? And you say football crowd, football thugs, whatever it is, probably whether they're particular firm or not, or they're just a group of people that are out watching the football as part of a crowd. And so we're not talking about the usual kind of situation about, well, what we do in terms of awareness. I mean, if you're a passerby, or if you're just leaving that club, then you're leaving that bar. Well, first of all, on match day, don't go into town where the football is and drink in the pubs where the football fans go. You're just asking for trouble. I mean, I'm sure we've all done it. I've done it in Belgium, and I ended up in a pub with a few people that I was traveling with, and then the football crowds come in, and you realise, oh crikey, or I've been to the game and gone to the pub, and the opposing fans have been in there, and so on. But generally in that kind of situation, leave as quickly as you can, because it is a flashpoint, right? If you're in with the opposition fans, even if you're not. Actually, one of the most tense things I've ever experienced was with football fans. I mean, I used to go to the football quite a lot growing up, and certainly in my late teens and early 20s, well, certainly my 20s, as a season ticket holder at Crystal Palace. But I was living in Nottingham towards the end of that, and I remember going down, trying to get in to see Palace in the playoff finals against, I think it was Sheffield or someone, and I couldn't get in, but my girlfriend and I went for a drink in the pub near Wembley, and then had something to eat. And Palace won with the last kick of the game, got promoted. I went back to King's Cross, to St Pancras, to get the train back up, and all the opposition fans were waiting on the platform. And then I had a Palace shirt on underneath my jacket, and it was quite a warm summer's day, right? End of the season playoffs, so I had to zip it up and sit on the train with like 100 really pissed off, I think it was Sheffield United or Sheffield Wednesday fans all around me, like saying, "Were you at the football?" I'm trying to sort of affect a really kind of West Country accent, go, no, I don't really like the football and all that. Oh, who do you support? It's like Torquay. Just didn't want to upset them. Someone said, "Who's the manager?" So I made up a name, and I thought, I hope you don't know I hope you don't know, just like I don't. So I had 2 hours. The police kept stopping the train. Police kept coming on at all the stations. So about 2.5 hours with these opposing fans on the side, on the carriageway. So I think in that kind of situation, if it's match day in and around town, good self-defense skills is avoid those kinds of places. But given that that's not the situation here, we can set that aside, and just think about the kind of the tactics that are involved for the doorstop. Got some fireworks going off outside. I thought that had stopped, but so we can think about those tactics a little bit. And my initial impressions were, as I said when you showed it the first time, that actually once they seem to know what they're doing, which is don't get dragged away from the front door. Stick together. Don't let people get behind you. Then you're funneling people in front of you. You're limiting the numbers that can actually reach you, and then you just got to keep hitting. They were trying to drag them away. You could see them trying to drag them off the front door, and every time they got dragged away, every time someone hooked hold of a coat, or pulled a coat up and managed to get a little bit of leverage on them, they create a little bit of space between them and the others. Then that's when they started to get hit more, and they got isolated, and they got pulled apart. And then once one was pulled away, it seemed like another one would either get pulled away or follow them to maybe try and get someone off them. And that's when one of them got punched to the floor, thrown to the floor. And like you say, was lucky not to have someone jump all over him at that point. But then when they managed to get up and kind of beat a retreat back to the door or the wall, then they managed to kind of hold their own against a much larger group.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it only went sort of south for them once they were ragged out. But you could see that was, first couple of punches thrown and not really reaching. So it turned to that ragging drill. It turned into all the crowd just looking to haul them out and swarm them. And that's not organized. That's how it plays out, by untrained people,
Yeah.
It's just rag you around.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to punch, if you haven't stood up and thrown a punch, rag them about, they fall down, give them a boot. It doesn't need any training. But
no, it's innate.
Half a dozen people doing that, and you get your head kicked in.
Yeah, innately, even the untrained know that. I mean, I guess it's just a predatory thing, right? When you're faced with an animal that can fight back, then get it to the floor as quickly as you can, and try to boot it as hard as you can. Employ the biggest muscles in your body that you've got, because that's your advantage, right? You don't have to go to school to learn that one. You don't have to go to evening classes on football hooliganism to learn that one, right? It's just innate.
Yeah, absolutely. And so to start with, sort of getting ragged about and that, and like you say, once they got back, the only thing I noticed was there was only one, like you say, then the guy nearest the camera, once they were back to the wall, and he had his hands up, and he did get a good straight in at one of the chaps, and it sort of staggered him back just before the end of the video. He was the only one throwing any punches of the security guys. So, there's one, obligation. Are they allowed to? Two, what's their experience? Is that a kind of place that doesn't kick off a lot, and you've got someone who's a bit handy just by luck, and two guys who are just chaps in high vises who are looking to say you can't come in because they're a bit broad. They clearly weren't,
or not even broad anymore, as far as I can. I mean, I have views on a lot of these things, but yeah, I mean, so here's a couple of thoughts. One is that it's often very difficult for doormen, especially kind of bad press that they often get, door staff, to know when it's appropriate to hit back or not, because the press that they often get is marred by the one or two that seem to be a bit kind of slap happy, and weighed in with stuff, and so it's often very difficult to know when to do that. And many clubs, many club managements have this kind of zero tolerance of door staff hitting people. But at the end of the day, sure, door staff are there to make sure the establishment and the customers are safe, protect the property and the people in it, and they should do that in a way that is extremely reasonable where possible. But at some point, when their own physical safety is challenged, then their right to self-defense supersedes any kind of obligations, any contractual obligations to the place, right? You can't try and wrist lock someone with a knife because the management don't want you to punch someone in the face. If your best chance of stopping someone from sticking a knife in you in that situation is to hit them in the face, then in my view your legal obligation to the establishment is superseded by your right to preserve your own life in that instance. And again, in that situation, I'm not sure exactly what unfolded, and so you can ask that question. Was what they did reasonable in the circumstances, right? Well, could they have gone back inside, right? Could they have just gone back inside, shut the door? That would be one thing. Then are the doors coming in? That was a problem we always had. If you retreated back inside the glass doors, because most bars and clubs don't want steel doors on the front, they put glass doors on the front, so people can see all the revelers inside. You go back in, and suddenly the patio table comes through the door, and the management saying, well, why did you let them do that? But also there's that kind of thing, trying to diffuse stuff outside, trying to calm things down, and sometimes that just doesn't work, right? It's very difficult to calm down a group. You can calm down one person, right, because you can focus on them quite considerably and attentively. But if you're talking to 2 or 3 people, it's very difficult to calm down a group, even if you're very good at it. And even if you're doing a good job with 2 or 3, and I think we saw that in that case, even if you're doing a good job with 2 or 3, someone who's behind them, who you're not talking to, can just be getting more and more amped up and more angry at what's going on. They just come running through and punch you, right?
Yeah.
And then it kicks off, and you think, oh well, actually we're doing a good job here calming these things down, and it kicks off from someone else that you hadn't even paid it much mind to at all. I had that a few times working the door. You think you're doing a fantastic job, and then suddenly someone gets hit from someone else that you didn't even think was part of the problem. And so it goes off too quick. Maybe they couldn't retreat inside. And once it goes off and their punches are being thrown like that, if you can't get back inside, then you've got to protect yourself. And hitting people that are hitting you is quite possibly reasonable in that situation. And the other issue that you raise is a germane one, which is how much ability at doing that kind of thing do those who do that job now have? The one on the closest to the camera did seem to know how to throw jab cross or something.
Yeah.
But my experience of talking to doormen in recent years is that they're somewhat concerned about the quality of people that do the SIA qualification. They go along to the job centre or whatever it is, they're 18, 19. Well, what are you going to do? I don't know. I wouldn't mind working at a music festival over the summer. Oh, well, you should do your SIA qualification. You do that, or there's an agency, and then you end up in some bar in the Meadows or St Anne's where there's trouble every night, and you've never been in so much as an argument with your girlfriend, and suddenly you got some dude that doesn't like what you've asked them to do, and they're going to take your head off, and you're just not used to that, right? And we've had it at training, right? We get people come in who go, oh yeah, I'm a doorman, I work at this and I work at that, and you think, oh well, you're going to be tough, right? You're going to be resilient, and they're not, right? They're just
not at all.
But they don't seem to understand it, but also they then can't do it even when you show it. It's not like they're tough but they have no training, but they will get it quickly. They're often just kind of, oh no, I'm not sure I could do all of that. And so I think there's a category of people that do that job that maybe aren't, they don't have the training or the experience to deal with what suddenly occurs in those situations. But it's not to malign any of those on that door. It seemed like it kicked off pretty quick.
Yeah, and they were hugely outnumbered and all that, and may well have been doing a good job, best intended. There's no accounting for late night, post football, post drinking. Things happen.
Yeah.
So, but what stood out? So the 2 bits that you can perhaps expand on. First of all, that backs to the wall stuff that we were doing in class in November, December, absolutely tied into that, and you clearly see the difference between when they did it and when they didn't do it, and how it went off, even against fairly untrained but a keen group of people. And then secondly, about the striking, the ability to stand up and throw some punches, as a neutralizing factor, as a factor for defending yourself. That ability to spar and stand there, see them coming in, take a few, send a few back, stand your ground, move, be aware of where you're moving, how you're hitting and moving. That aspect of sparring that we have in some aspect, some classes do, some classes don't, and the value to being able to stick a punch down the line at someone whilst you're taking one back.
Those are 2 really interesting and sort of interlocked issues. I mean, just on the kind of the, if you're able to hit, we talked about this before, if you're able to hit hard, right, you've done a bit of training, you're able to hit hard, just jab, cross, hook, 3 shots, if you can hit reliably hard with 3 shots, palm strike, slap, whatever, if you've got those and you can throw them in quick combination and so on, and you can hit with power, then you're way in advance of the vast majority looking at that kind of video, right? And actually, and this is always my experience, right, there's nothing difficult about those kinds of fights particularly. Right. It's just the sheer numbers in that case that make the difference, right? Really, yeah. When you're used to sparring against people that can fight, then fighting people that have no clue there's nothing great about it, right? It's just sometimes a bit too easy. It's just a bit too simple. Most people that haven't done it before just get flustered, right? They're just too adrenalized to begin with, and that's where the skill drops because of the sheer adrenaline. It does for all of us unless we're working in that environment. So really, the difference between someone who can punch and those people that we saw who were just kind of swinging wildly and so on, it's sheer blue water between them. I think we've said that before. But the other two things are really interesting, right? One is the kind of the skills and the attributes that come from sparring and practicing fighting, and the other one is the skills and attributes that come from doing particular drills that replicate situations. And so we do that drill that replicates exactly that situation, not for doormen but just for regular people, and that's a drill that we've been doing for a few years now, and it's a drill that I call Gang of Youths. It's the Gang of Youths drill, and it kind of came about through a conversation with someone that I met at a conference that made a penny drop. Because we deal with multiple attackers all the time, multiple attackers situation all the time, and what's the base? It's kind of the zombie game where there's 2 or 3 people walking around, and you're employing the kind of the physical tactics appropriate for that situation, which is you're moving so that they don't surround you. You're trying to keep your opponents in a line so that one's behind the other, so we're stacking them up, and then you're trying to string them out so you're getting a little bit of space so that they catch up to you at different time intervals, so that you can deal with one and you've got a second to do it before you can deal with another, and then you're moving again, and so on and so forth. And that's a kind of a movement based multiple assailant drill, and it's great for thinking about multiple assailants out in the open, but it's very difficult when you're in a compressed space to do that kind of drill. And for a long time practice, kind of backs to the wall. Basic one, put yourself in a corner so people have to funnel into the corner, or with a buddy, put yourselves back to the wall. So we've always done that kind of thing. I had a conversation with someone at a conference who was an MMA guy, and he fought for America's top team, America top team, and so on. He was very, very good fighter, a professional, but through various reasons had to stop. And we got talking about Krav Maga, MMA, and so on. And he recounted to me an incident that he had with a gang of youths in, I think it was Cardiff city centre. I was there last year, and you can understand why he was saying it. And basically, he was kind of outspoken American guy who took exception to a kid throwing a lighter at him from fairly close distance. So he turned around and sort of reprimanded him, and then realized very quickly that there were about 10 of them that had surrounded him. And so he kind of, they bundled him, and he managed to get out from underneath them after a few seconds and started to run. And he ran to a shop doorway and put his back into a shop doorway. And then he said, but it wasn't like one of your Krav Maga zombie drills, right? They weren't just kind of all coming up in a line and so on. He said, yeah, ready for me to hit. He said, after I hit the first one and put him out on the floor, right, the others weren't so keen to step into range. He said, so that they employed this kind of thing where, A, they threw shit at me, right? He said, one of them picked up their BMX bike and just fucking hurled it from about 6 feet away. He said, so I got hit with this bike, and as this bike hit me, another one came in and grabbed my coat, tried to rag me out, but because he had my coat, he was well out of punching range because my coat was all stretched out. He said, so he's trying to pull me out, I'm trying to pull my coat away from him. Another one jumps in, tries to punch him in the side of the head. He said, so I hit him, so I managed to get my coat free, and then they're sort of dodging in and dodging out. One's trying to grab him. Another one, he said, had the saddle off his bike and was like using it like like an axe over the top, trying to hit him with the saddle of the bike, right? And another one was like picking bottles out the bin and throwing bottles at him. He said, and so this was all going off, and then there were 2 or 3 that were kind of sort of dodging in and like throwing the odd kind of looping punch, but head back, rabbit boxing kind of stuff. So I couldn't actually really hit any of them, and every time I stepped forward to hit one, another one would try and sneak around behind me. So I had to kind of back up quick, which is exactly the situation that you saw in that scenario that you played. And it's so the Gang of Youths drill tries to kind of model that. It tries to put that into a scenario where the subject of the drill, gets stuff thrown at them, has someone trying to drag them away. It requires that the other members of the class, usually we have like 2 or 3 groups working at once with about 5 or 6 in each group, understand what their roles are. Their roles aren't just to kind of swarm in and try and pummel them, but to try and bring them off the wall, then to grab hold of them, then to bring them to the floor, and so on. So the person has to control that dynamic as well. But it requires that you keep your cool, that you have awareness and stuff looping in from 20 yards away being hurled at you, and that when someone does step into range, you take your opportunity to hit them really hard, because you're not getting away from that. There's nowhere to go. You can't go any further back. And as soon as you step out, they're going to grab you because they want you. They just don't want to get beaten up in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, you mentioned in that video, I don't know if you noticed, the sort of the melee moves up the screen a bit, and there's a guy at the bottom tries to pick up the weight for the umbrella, the patio umbrella, but it's too heavy. But he tries to pick it up and throw it, but it's full of water, and he sort of biffs it. But it's exactly that. Had he been able to pick that up, that would have been in on the backs of someone's heads,
Yeah. And thankfully there are no glass bottles allowed in and around kind of city centre pubs or glasses anymore, because the other thing that will happen immediately is all the glasses off the table would be launched at you, and then the bins on the streets, seen it before, they go out and grab as many bottles out of the bin as you can and use those as missiles, and then use one to club you with. But now fortunately it's all plastic. That removes a weapon of opportunity in that kind of situation.
Yeah, but it does show that weapons of opportunity. I mean, the bike saddle, that's novel. It's actually not the first time I've heard of it. Felix saw it happen where he lives in the marketplace, and it was kicking off, and some lad managed to pull his bike seat off, but he punched with the round end of the saddle. And like took a cookie cutter out of some guy's head with it. It's it's inventive, so I think it's perhaps one for another pod, but those improvised weapons and weapons of opportunity are available to us if we're aware of them. But at the same time, they're available to them too, so guard against.
No, I've seen 3-on-2 situation outside a nightclub. Watched it from the front door unfold. 3 lads having an argument with 2, and one just sauntered off, picked up a bit of 4x2 that's just laying there next to one of the clubs, just down the side of the club. Obviously there's some building materials down the side of the pub. There's some building materials down there. Comes back with a bit of 4x2 up his back. You can see it poking out above his head, right? But he stands there. And the 2 guys are talking. He takes it out and he cracks one of them across the top of the shoulder with it. So, right, cracky. Okay, yeah. So we always talk about kind of improvised weapons if you need to and so on. But we have to be aware that other people are improvising as well. Right? Bicycle saddle, brings with it a smell as well as an impact. But
both ends are rotten, eh?
Wake up smelling funny. So no, I mean that from that perspective, it does kind of bear fruit in the sense of that's one of the scenarios that we practice for, and you have to be inventive in that kind of stuff, and that's a familiar one. But it kind of raises another. I like the other issue that you kind of mentioned, which is getting the skills from sparring and so on versus scenarios and so on, and how you should balance those kinds of things in training, right? And I've sung the praises of kind of combat sports in the last few episodes, because I think they do give you great kind of attributes: resilience, hitting hard, getting hit, timing, all those kinds of things, fitness. I think they give you all of those in a kind of a bucket load. But I've also, I think we've said, but it's worth saying again, that if you're interested in kind of self-defense broadly understood, or fighting tactics for real violence, then the sporting combat sports, as good as they are, don't provide you with that stuff as well. And then on the other hand, at the other extreme, there's the kind of the hardcore combatives brigade, which kind of eschew any kind of sparring. They why would you do that? It's not realistic. We can get the same kind of impact and power and resilience from hitting a pair of pads and having the pad holder hit you and putting you in a circle and hitting you with pads, or putting you against the wall and you cover up your head and you get hit. You can get all the same attributes from just that. What you want to do is prepare for scenarios, and use your hammer fist in the scenario rather than in the sparring. So there's two kind of different approaches, and those on one end of the spectrum think you don't need the other, that you just need to do what they do, and that will solve all the issues. And I'm not of that view, but I don't know what you think, what the balance between, or what the place of sparring is in kind of self-defense and defensive tactics, or fighting system like Krav Maga, versus scenario training and so on.
Yeah, so purely from a Krav Maga perspective, if I think back to when I started as a student, sparring has always been integral to it, and there was always justification for that, and explanations from yourself and other sort of very senior and sort of global instructors saying it's not about teaching you to be a boxer, it's about sending in shots and taking hits and building up some duress and moving against an opponent that wants to take pieces off you. You're not running through a drill that starts and has a principled approach through this. You do this and then that and then that, and then you snatch them down and you boot them and you run off. And it's not like that every time. You just stand up and throw punches. So I think the sparring, I've always really enjoyed the sparring. One, it gets your blood up. Two, makes you frightened, right? Even in training, you're ready for it and you want it, and you go and you pick one of your buddies who knows going to go sort of toe to toe with you. You go, right, you and me, and then you're wailing on each other, and there's a great adrenaline to that, and you realize what that does to you. Realize where that fatigues you. You realize how sometimes hard it is to just stay there and keep your hands up and keep going. All of those are, and they're sort of supplementary training, but it's instilling in you that you don't want to stand there and duke it out for ages. It's tiring, but I think being punched in the head a little bit and not being put off by that is hugely important. I think unless you're actually taking a few beats and not just being ragged about from the technical perspective and through the scenario based drills, but actually just having a focus on taking a piece out of somebody whilst they try and do that to you, it's vitally important. I think it wills out in any of the any of the combat sports that sort of do hold their own. And you look at things like milling in the army that historically I've had to do. At no point are you expected on the battlefield to put on a pair of gloves and start bopping somebody. There's a different reason for them making you do that. It's about heart. It's about taking some and giving some back and not being too worried if your eyes split. You don't think about that in that moment. You carry on. You're not put off by a bit of blood in your mouth.
Yeah.
And I think if you're not getting a bit of blood in your mouth, you're missing out on some fundamental training. And a bit
if you are put off by the milling, then you're off to chef school, right? That's the
hardest in the army. That no one's ever passed.
No, you're the chef, right? You're not going to be a frontline soldier if you back away from the milling, right? It's no, some good points. I mean, and these are the complexities of training for things that aren't the ring or aren't just, for the love of it, that has a kind of a practical use, but maybe a very rare practical use, with certain limitations. And so I have a few thoughts. One is the usual kind of thing. Well, if you're doing lots of sparring and lots of training like MMA or boxing, why aren't you just going to boxing or to MMA? And that usually comes out in the kind of the newbie questions, or the questions you get from the uninitiated. Well, who would win out of a MMA guy and a Krav Maga guy? To which the answer is, well, do you mean in the cage? Well, unless he's a doofus, right? The MMA guy every time. Why? Because that's what he's training for, right? Same as in the boxing ring. You got someone that trains 4 hours a week on just boxing, compared with someone who trains 4 hours a week on Krav Maga. Then boxing, all else being equal, boxer's going to win, because that's the environment they're training for, right? Well, why is that? Well, because we're not putting as much time into training boxing as the boxer. That just stands to reason, right? And the same with MMA. Well, why not just go to MMA? Well, because our interest and our concern is for a broader spectrum of problems than the one that the boxer and the MMA guy faces. Now, it's not to say that the boxer and the MMA person wouldn't do really well in some of those situations, given the attributes that they've got. But, we can imagine that, we train for situations where those skills that they have would be less contextually appropriate for the situation. So, knife problems, or multiple assailants, and environmental training, and so on. And so things to add to that. The other extreme, is the kind of the no sparring school, either because it's very regimented, they grab me here, I have a series of moves which I do, which we have in Krav Maga, there's the techniques of what to do if someone grabs you in a bear hug, which basically is a microcosm of a wrestling match for like 1 second, and I do this, I do that, and my partner essentially lets me do it. And to me, that kind of training reminds me of Aikido, right? It's totally compliant, and if you're not throwing that compliancy away, then the guy's just acting like a corpse, just corpsing for you whilst you do what you want to do, and that's totally unrealistic. But okay, well, maybe we'll move to that scenario training stuff, right? We just do the scenarios, we do the multiple assailant stuff, we do this, we do the caught in the telephone box. Not there are any telephone boxes anymore. We're caught in the car. What do we do if we're caught in the car? And we do all of that stuff. But again, that can't be all of it, because there's some things that you don't get from that you do, I feel, from sparring, the kinds of things that you talked about, which is generally the unpredictability, right? Even in armored assailant training, even where you've got your mate in the car with a head guard on and a set of pads and a glove, and he's going to beat on you, at the end of the day, it's not going to be hugely realistic, because it's just your mate, even though he's wearing a funny suit. And B, he's going to lose, because that's implicitly the purpose of what you're doing, right? That's implicitly the purpose of he's the person that's giving you a problem. You're the one that's going to overcome it. And even if he puts up a really tough fight, you're going to win, because he's not suddenly going to take the glove off and bite your face off, or pound you into unconsciousness as part of that drill, right? Chances are he's not, right? Maybe in some people's drill you'd get to that level, but mostly that's not going to happen, right? The kind of the unwritten rule in, you're in the car, you're going to have a bit of a roll around in the car. As soon as you put a few hammer fists in on him, then he's going to kind of curl up into a ball, and that's it. But he's going to make you work for that win. Okay, that's fine. It has its place, but that's totally different to sparring, like say, where dude's going to hit me back. I have no idea how he's going to hit me, but he wants to win just like I do, or he wants to at least walk away from this thinking, I really held my own with that guy tonight. I didn't curl up when he kicked me really hard in the ribs, and I kicked him back as hard as I could, or even though we were working light, I tagged him as many times as he tagged me. So there's that element to it, right? It's not consensual, it's not cooperative in that sense, right? It's competitive. In a way that the asymmetrical training isn't competitive, and it it also has those other things like, not just unpredictability of what's going to happen, but the distance it's going to happen at, what he's going to react to when I do something to him. And kind of missing a lot. So like, just don't hit very well, and it's like suddenly he's all over me, and that didn't work, and now I've got to find a different solution to the problem. So I think the sparring introduces a whole different element to what we do, and has to be part of it.
Yeah, definitely. And people, you see people don't like it. Some people,
Well, it's
people
uncomfortable.
don't like it. It's uncomfortable, but that is that's the great thing about it. That's the benefit that you're taking from it.
Yeah. And so long as that uncomfort that uncomfort is plugged into an experience, which the people that we train by and large are people that want to do it for enjoyment as well as for skills, right? It's more than just going to the gym and getting fit for a period of time and then forget. They want skills for life, right? That's one of the great things. They come, even if they only come for 6 months, those 6 months of skills will last them forever, right? They may perish a little bit, but they're going to have that knowledge forever. But they also want to have a bit of fun, right? And so long as sparring is uncomfortable. A lot of the stuff that we do is uncomfortable. As long as it's packaged within something that is, that people actually want to turn up to do, then don't see any issue with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, I do think it is important within it. So just balance of how much you do, and
Yeah, and that's another good point, really, which is what kind of sparring should you do, right, within the kind of the world that we're in, the fighting tactics, Krav Maga, combative situation. How much of a class should be sparring, as opposed to technical drilling and increasing power and stuff like that, and what kind of sparring should it be? I don't mean should it be 2-on-1, 3-on-1 on the floor and so on, all of those kinds of considerations, but should it be light? Should it be with gloves? Should it be touch sparring? Should it be full contact? Should it be the body? Should it be to the head? And so on. My views on that have changed dramatically over the years, to be honest.
Yeah. From what? From hard to more work, more padded work, or
so I think back when you started, probably we were doing boxing gloves on, gum shield in, bang away at each other, which was pretty much my experience from growing up doing and combat sports, right, boxing, Thai boxing, and so on. Always with control, but a lot of punching to the head and so on. Never overly hard. People start to punch too hard. Right, calm it down. It's just training and so on. But occasionally it would be full on and so on, gym war, that kind of thing. And I think actually my perspective on that changed a while ago, and so my kind of thoughts on sparring changed a while ago, and I've changed the way that we do it, which is that most of the people that come to Krav Maga are not wanting to prepare for the ring, right? If they were wanting to do that, then they would go to boxing, they would go to MMA and so on. And that kind of heads focus sparring is only really necessary if you're preparing for that, right? So out of a 90-minute class, I'd be doing maybe 15 minutes of sparring towards the end, 20 minutes of sparring towards the end at tops in a regular class, anywhere between 10 and 20 minutes. And so if you're doing 3 hours of training a week, then you're getting anywhere between 20 and 40 minutes of sparring. Some of that will be fullish contact, with power, with boxing gloves. Some of it will be lighter contact or virtually no contact at all, with MMA mitts or bare knuckles. But out of the sparring I do, probably 90% is body shots only, punches and kicks to the body only. So kind of Kyokushin stuff or boxing, kickboxing to the body. Because my reasoning is that most people don't want to spend that time not preparing for the ring but getting hit in the head a lot, right? And it's probably not necessary for the 1 or 2 opportunities in their life where they might actually get into a fight where they're going to get hit in the head, that they get hit in the head for 20 minutes 3 times a week for 15 years, right? The cost of that to individuals in terms of trauma to the head and brain
Yeah, yeah.
Given
You're
what
not
we now
conditioning
know,
yourself there, are
yeah,
you?
given what we now know, you're not conditioning yourself anymore by doing that once in a blue moon. You know, you don't need the precise skills of head movement and so on, and all of that you would need if you were competing in a regular basis in the boxing ring, on Thai boxing ring. You don't need that head movement, that reaction time on tap all the time that you would need to invest that amount of time in head sparring. For you know, and so I think the kind of people that we get with the aims and interests that they have, and the benefit that that would bring is nowhere near the cost that it would imply. And so, yeah, should do some, right? You know, should know what it's like to get hit in the head, and you should know what it's like to hit someone in the head, and you should know how to move your head and protect your head and all those kinds of things. But I think that can be achieved in, you know, maximum about 10% of the time of that you spend sparring. And so, you know, most of the stuff that we do, even when it's kind of full on, you know, boxing gloves on or Kyokushin style, you know, punch in the body, you know, full on, 90% will be the body, and only 10% the head. And even with the head stuff, you know, sometimes with gloves, you know, 16, 18 ounce boxing gloves, other times, you know, bare knuckles or light hand protection. And, you know, when you do that, people tend to keep it a little bit lighter anyway, to the head. You know, no one wants to be bouncing their knuckles off other people's foreheads. And so that's kind of my take on things now, which is, you know, sure, if you're going Thai boxing, then, you know, you're going to be doing more head sparring with the proper equipment, but we don't need to do that amount of hitting to the head for what we're training for.
Yeah, yeah. Quite agreed. And you know, I see we rarely use the headgear in sparring because it just means there's a nice bigger target and it looks padded, so I'm going to hit it hard. I know, you know, when you and I have sort of got together and gone, right, you know, let's have a tear up and sort of make sure we can still we can still do it to some degree. We start off putting all the kit on and are punch drunk in half an hour and have to de-kit and suddenly
Yeah,
risk knuckles on a forehead, and
yeah,
we're a bit more, you know, we're a bit sharper.
yeah,
But every time we put headgear on, I've gone home with you know, Tweety Pie whipping round here.
yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, and as we get older, it's not quite so sensible. But no, I mean, you know, growing up, you know, boxing and Thai boxing, even then I used to think this is nuts, right? And it's partly why I stopped, was because, you know, training 3 or 4 times a week, the next morning I wake up with a headache.
Yeah,
That's just from getting hit, you know, 100 times last night, right? In training, let alone competing. It's from getting hit that many times, you know, lightly, hard, and so on. But you know, but I had a particular, you know, kind of focus. But now it's like, you know, for Krav Maga, for self-defense and fighting tactics, is that really necessary? Probably not. You can get the kind of conditioning and skills you want without doing very much of that. Of course, you've got to do some if you want to be as realistic as is reasonable. You need those skills of, you know, being hit in the head and learning to avoid it and take it and so on. But to keep compounding that over and over and over again, I don't think adds much. The gains would be marginal from increasing it for anything from 10% upwards, for given the end game that we're kind of training people towards. But yeah, you're right. You know, you put a head guard on, and you know, and this was the thing about the UFC in the early days, which I really liked, was that, yeah, people hit the head, but they often broke their hand in doing so.
yeah.
But as soon as you put a glove on someone, right, it doesn't stop the brain trauma. It stops the trauma to the facial tissues.
Yeah,
And so the hand injuries. Well, yeah, because you can hit hard. And in fact, you know, I don't know what the evidence says, but you know, with a glove on, you can hit harder than without a glove on, right? Because you just know that your knuckles aren't going to shatter. Whereas if you're, yeah, you kind of hold back a little bit a lot of the time. You know, bare knuckle boxing now, you know, they are hitting quite hard to the head, but you know, but they're also using open hands and elbows and things like that. You know, and So I'm not sure gloves really save the brain. And if the claim is, well, it's not realistic if you don't hit the head. Well, it's not realistic if you hit the head with a glove. That's not realistic, right? That's a contrived thing. So at least do your sparring, bare knuckled. And then if you want to hit the head as hard as you can, you're not going to get many takers, because most people don't want to go to work the next day with their eyebrow puffed up and a black eye and knuckle grazers across the top of the head looking like Shrek. But what you'll find is that it doesn't actually shake your brain as much when you do it for real. So the boxing gloves create a false sense of reality, I always think.
Yeah, and we see that, we mix it up in class like that, kit, no kit, light, tough, hard, keep it short.
Yeah, and also the idea, and this comes from Thai boxing days, and also training with Bob Breen. Bob Breen used to have a saying, which is, there's a place for full contact sparring. It's in the ring, right? It's in the ring. That's where you do the full contact stuff with gloves on, right? In training, you don't really want to do that, right? Now, people disagree. They're kind of Dutch kickboxing school. Every sparring session should be a gym war. Like, Bob's view was, when you're sparring, right, you're paying into the bank. The cost of getting hit shouldn't be high in sparring, and that allows you to work and to develop. And so, if you're sparring with control and not too much power, and you're doing a lot of body sparring and a little bit of head sparring, then you're investing, you're building your skills, you're paying into the bank, so that when you do the full contact stuff, then you can draw on that deposit that you've made, right? But if all you're doing is heavy sparring, then you're never paying anything in, you're just drawing on your account. And if you haven't got much in your account, then you're going to lose every time, right? So you need to pay it, and I think that reframed a lot of my perspective when I was about 24, 25, that actually, you don't need to. And the Thai boxing club that I trained at under Gary Derrick for a while, the sparring was always very gentle because the fights were so hard. It's like, I don't need to get beaten up in training. We never fought. We never very rarely sparred with shin protection and stuff like that. And therefore you didn't kick each other hard. The resilience came from, kicking the pads hard, not each other hard. And then, you suck it up when you get in the ring.
Yep. Good. Right, we're hour 14. So
I think that's from when I started the original call, but you were late getting on, so I think we're a little less than that. But we should call it a day there, and I will find the next video. And
good, look forward to it.
Maybe something a little bit different next time. I don't know. I'll see what I can find, and we'll line another one up soon.
Look forward to it. Excellent.
Good to
see you this week of training.
See you soon.
See you later.